Used to walk these fields without a care. A simpler time, the wind in my hair. I hear talk of chaos in the air. Feels like I'm clutching at threads just to bear. The news pours out like a flood that's grown wild. With every headline I feel more beguiled. Can't find the truth in a world beguiled. Feels like the good days have all been exiled. The world's spinning out of control, can't you see? Like an old broken down truck, we're stuck in deep debris. Can't find our way back to the way we used to be. The world's spinning out of control, breaking me.
But in the end, we did not break. Though some of us may yet break. Time is coming, I'm sure, for all of us. Good evening, it is I, Curtis Selby, your tired blogger, what blogs, in this case, at 6:02 p.m. Yo, LBG, free the net, welcome, welcome. Glad to see you, and I cannot wait for the day when we do, in fact, free the net. Underground raid, huzzah! We're being raided. While I'm at it, let me also say hello to the first person that came into the chat, John Potterero. Thank you so much for your patience with a tired blogger, for your prayers, your brotherly love, your support, all the links and information that you share with me. Gorilla's Random Thoughts, hail, welcome, and well met. The underground raid is most welcome, because if you're listening to this, you are the resistance. And in just a few weeks, the sides have flopped that have been saying that. All good. In the end, according to John Potterero, the love you take is equal to the olive you make. The LVG says we got one step closer today, brother. How wonderful. Please, by all means, let me know in the chat. Or I might, I don't know, I might send you a link if you want to be on a panel or something. Because today I'm just basically sharing random stuff that I've found. Some of it pertains to Trump and some of it just pertains to me being a weirdo. All right, we're 4 minutes in. I'm going to go ahead and stop the lovely rock music. Good news abounds everywhere. Gorilla's Random Thoughts. How will the resistance turn out? Like the French or like the South? Oh, wow. Yeah, good question. Very good question. I don't know about you, but I've been practicing my surrender drills all day. Oh, wait. No, sorry. Just teasing about that. Okay, let's see. I suppose I will go ahead and begin with one of the things that I've shared. Oh, hey, more people. Yay! New to this channel anyway, JG's Metal and Star Trek. Welcome, welcome. I hope you find some of this informative and maybe even mildly entertaining. Internet genius took me forever to figure out how to close the survey. Right on, right on. Gorilla's Random Thoughts, finally something today that will be drama-free. Politics! Isn't that sad and kind of scary? I know I didn't rewatch what you had been discussing yesterday, so I don't know all the details, but heart goes out to you. I know it can be difficult trying to balance and juggle people. Um, I used to bend over backward to be centrist, but while I no longer do that, I do still try to be fair, and I know you do too, sir. I know you do too. Some days are just easier than other days, but and we all have our egos. I'm not going to name names or talk about people. I have an ego. I try to keep it in check, but it doesn't always come out that way. All right. So as you all know, I've been documenting my journey from being a centrist, being someone. Hopefully, this doesn't scare people away. If it does, I understand. Being someone who is pro-Trump. I've been trying to explain why I'm pro-Trump, why that may why while that is in some ways not popular in some circles, I've always kind of felt like I had to defend what I believe. I don't know why that is. I have my own speculations, but I won't share them here just yet. One of the reasons why I ended up being a pro-Trump person is because I am a contrarian. And where I'm going with this is, if you throw dozens upon dozens of celebrities up and they say that they're supporting one side, it's going to make me want to support the other side. This is not logical. Probably this is not right, but this is the way I am. I wanted to say that so that I can explain the first thing that I'm going to be sharing. Hey, DJ Ronnie G, while you guys are at it, there's already 2 or 3 people that you need to go check out their channels. LDG Free the Net has a wonderful site and YouTube channel. He is trying to will develop an app that will help us retake our freedoms from the big tech firms that basically just think we're little ants. Also, please check out Gorilla's Random Thoughts. He has some wonderful videos, lots of good talk. I know that there were some issues the other day, but there are issues that we all have. And he also has wonderful watch parties of various movies, including Waltons, which is actually awesome. I remember them so well. I do not know this person, but he's got Star Trek and metal in there, so I'm assuming he is also awesome. If anyone would like, please check him out. I usually like to inspire people to sub to each other. I'm not saying, JG, that you have to sub to anybody, but I would really welcome anyone that's in the chat to check out this person and give them a look and give them a subscription if you would like to do that. JG's Metal and Star Trek. I took a hiatus from Americans for the last 8 or so months because of unnecessary drama. You guys always make such a circus out of election campaigns. No offense to Americans in general. No, I don't take any offense because it's basically the truth. Even though I ended up becoming pro-Trump, I have criticisms of the guy, and I'm okay with at least legitimate criticisms of the guy. And this, to me, is a legitimate criticism. We do make circuses out of our elections. Gorilla's Random Thoughts. Free the frickin' net. Right on. JG is a good guy. He's part of the underground raid. Well, I welcome the underground raid. We are the resistance. I'm not sure. Actually, I know what we're resisting. We're resisting censorship. We're resisting big tech companies taking advantage of the little guy. We stand for the underdog on this channel. That may not sound logical after some of the things that I've just said. Hopefully you'll forgive me and listen to some of my stuff. I promise it's not going to be a complete rant. So, as you know, many celebrities came out and endorsed Kamala Harris. It's a done deal. It's kind of over and done, so possibly it's pointless to even bring this up. But I just feel the need to do so. One of my one of my unsung heroes, somebody that I almost never talk about, is Scott Baio.
Nero.
Oh, almost starting it before I really meant to. And I am sharing this, right? Yes, I am. Scott Baio, essentially, I don't know that he ever would have been an Academy Award winning actor, but because of some of the stances he's taken politically, right or wrong, have really hampered his career. I'm a weirdo, though. I actually respect that. It's to me, it's like the liberals that are here in Oklahoma. I am myself not a liberal per se. I don't. I get if I'm going to take a label, I'm going to take the label of libertarian, although that's not exactly true, but it's the closest that I can think of. I'm inspired. There are liberals in Oklahoma because it does take courage to be one in Oklahoma. But I'm more inspired or as inspired by conservatives in Hollywood because let's face it, it's virtually a death sentence to your career. JG's medal in Star Trek. Last time was the sad. Oh, are you talking about the passing away of Bird of Prey 5? If that is the case, or even if that's not, please feel free to elucidate if I'm wrong. But yeah, I think we all still mourn his passing quite a bit. But let's see what Scott Baio has to say to his fellow. I don't know if you can still call Scott Baio a celebrity, but I still liked Joni Loves Chachi. So let's see what he has to say.
Robert De Niro, Rob Reiner, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and others. From The View, Rachel Maddow, Mark Ruffalo, Mark Hamill, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Richard Marx, Alec Baldwin, Pink.
I actually like Richard Marx, but we can't all agree, I suppose.
Ron Howard, Julia Roberts, George.
Like Ron Howard too. I'm not saying that I don't like any of these people he's listing. I just I feel I absolutely feel what he's feeling in this statement.
Clooney, Leo DiCaprio, Oprah, Cardi B, Lizzo, Ariana Grande, Billie Eilish, Jennifer Garner, J-Lo, Andy Cohen, Cher, Bryan Cranston, Jamie Lee Curtis, Kathy Griffin, Michael Keaton, Rosie O'Donnell, John Stamos, Eva Longoria, John Legend and his wife, Spike Lee, Sean Astin, Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, Jon Stewart, Bill Maher, Alyssa Milano, Bruce Springsteen, Barbra Streisand, Mark Cuban, and others.
And there you have it. The dignity that is the conservative who has been basically censored for 4 years and is now coming out to let everyone know what they really think. Yeah, his passing. We've lost several people, and I almost hate to even start bringing their names up because I'll forget one of them and then feel like a cad. But Bird of Prey, Clobbering Times. I can think of 2 or 3 more, but I call myself tired blogger because I have chronic fatigue syndrome, and the syndrome causes my mind to just kind of shut off sometimes. So I'm seeing faces but not remembering the names at the moment because of the condition. But they are indeed missed. Some of them, quite a few of them, I had not known until I heard that they'd passed. But the community's had quite a few losses recently. I hope they all rest in peace. It's funny, the celebrities who said they're going to leave the USA, it's the only place they can have the career they do. Yeah, I agree. And look, I'm not going to hop up and down entirely because I realize few of us are perfectly few of us perfectly do what we say we're going to do. Having said that, it does get really tiresome. I mean, how many times have some of these people said this? And here they are. And I get it. Their careers are multi-million dollar things, and it's hard to let loose of that money. But at the same time, I would give so much if the celebrity endorsements would, I'm not even going to say stop, if they just kind of just back the hell off, because I don't go to celebrities for political advice. I go to them to entertain me, maybe in some cases to enlighten with a really well-made movie. Secondly of all, hopefully I can be forgiven for this, but I'm fed the hell up with one-sidedness in some things. In other words, we're going to criticize one side to the nth. We're going to lie about the one side, but we're definitely going to make sure that that side, that's the one that's being oppressed, they, by gosh, better not let any mistruth come out, or any parabola, or any, everything that they say has just got to be spot on perfect, or we're going to be all over it. I've gotten very tired of the dual standards. There's a reason in Hollywood there's British actors, Australian actors, Canadian actors, yeah, etc. Correct. I do wonder how much longer that's going to continue, because I don't know about anyone else, but I feel like Hollywood is essentially losing most of its credibility, not just in politics. If it was just that would be fine, but it just doesn't seem like they come out with quality products anymore. There's some exceptions. There's some really good exceptions. So I don't want to be like all these doomsayers and it's all over with Hollywood, but there is just enough of it going on that I wonder how much longer it can go on before they either have to start making good movies again, or we just start going somewhere else for entertainment. I'm a celebrity. More than 10 people know me, and I endorse Jean-Claude Van Damme for write-in. He didn't win, though. You know what? I love that. That's fantastic. I wish my state allowed write-ins. This time around, I don't think I would have, but I definitely would have done some write-in votes the last few elections before that. His political platform would be kicking things. And, I do want to apologize to everyone on this stream. I realize that you deserve nonstop kickboxing, as was demonstrated in the wonderful movie Time Wars. Was it Space Wars? I can't remember. It had a Jean-Claude Van Damme look-alike. But unfortunately, I'm not good at kickboxing. So if I were to turn the camera on and tried to kick anything, while the video might go viral, it would likely do so for reasons that would be embarrassing to me. So, but yes, I can definitely get behind a political platform of kicking things. It's better than, better than some things that I've heard. Now, if he'd just throw in a free pony for every American citizen, his vote would be clinched. I want to share something from another celebrity. This actually is a little bit more dignified. I found out about Justine Bateman being a conservative on X, and I'm going to share what she has written. Well, what was reported about her, sadly, by Fox News, which I realize makes this whole article likely persona non grata for some people. But Family Ties star Justine Bateman slams an American period over the last 4 years. Common sense discarded. Decompressing from walking on eggshells for the past 4 years, actress and filmmaker Bateman said. No, not Batman. Justine Bateman, who was the cute teenage girl from Family Ties and is now still a fairly lovely but now middle-aged woman, because, we all get old. Doing her thing, I guess, with NBC. Anyway. In the wake of a sweeping Republican electoral victory, filmmaker and actress Justine Bateman said on Friday that she had been walking on eggshells the past 4 years, a period she called un-American. I've found the last 4 years to be an almost intolerable period, a very un-American period in that any questioning, and this is where I'm at too. I wouldn't mind so much Dems winning. What I mind is where we ended up going with it. A very un-American period in that any questioning, any opinions, any likes or dislikes were held up to a very limited list of permitted positions in order to assess acceptability, Bateman posted on X. Bateman, who appeared in hit TV shows Family Ties and Desperate Housewives, added further that she's never known such conditions to be an American environment. It's an environment I have encountered in smaller groupings, a church, a private club, a clique, but never before as a national blanket. It has been suffocating. I would concur with that myself. Let me know what you think in the chat. Common sense was discarded. Intellectual discussion was demonized, she said. President-elect Donald Trump's victory sends Hollywood into a tailspin. She went on to say permitted position behavior and speech was allowed. Complete intolerance became almost a religion, and one's professional and social life was threatened almost constantly. I was lucky. I didn't have a lot of that go on, but I know some really good people whose careers ended because of the stances that they took. Those that spoke otherwise were ruined as a warning to others. And here's her Twitter post. Decompressing from walking on eggshells for the past 4 years. I found the last 4 years to be on almost intolerable period, a very un-American period in that any questioning, any opinions, any likes or dislikes were held up to a very limited list of permitted positions in order to assess acceptability. Their destruction, which is a little bit dramatic, but this is her words, their destruction was displayed in the town square of social media for all to see. Bateman's comments came after President-elect Donald Trump's landslide victory on Election Day over Vice President Kamala Harris in sweeping every battleground state, securing the Electoral College as well as the popular vote. Harris congratulated Trump over the phone on Wednesday morning and later delivered her concession speech at her alma mater, Howard University. Trump's second presidential election came alongside the GOP winning the Senate majority and gaining more seats in the House. That is what I did not predict. In fact, I really didn't predict anything. I hoped for a landslide one way or the other. I was voting for Trump, but frankly, I wanted it to be if it was going to be Kamala, I wanted it to be a landslide because I didn't want any questions. I didn't want any of this crap that we had last time of, oh, the election was stolen. Where? I didn't want any of that. Bateman added that the suppression of speech over the past 4 years has stifled the country from any forward movement because it has shut out independent thinkers and cultural and intellectual innovators. I don't know about you, but I remember when it was the right that did that, when it was the Republicans and the McCarthyists who were basically shutting down intellectual debate. This was the hashtag me too moment where every effort was made to divert attention to oneself instead of recognizing how one contributes to the whole. This was the era of trying to exercise control over those who did not want to follow the crowd and has their own ideas about what they needed to do, Bateman said. When you starve a society of those called to be independent thinkers and cultural and intellectual innovators, You rob that society of any forward movement, she continued. I'm going to interject something here. One of the reasons why we won World War II was because Mustache Man kicked out a lot of the Jews. A lot of the Jews were intellectuals and were free thinkers. Well, he didn't want that. He wanted yes men, and he wanted people that basically just touted the party line. So they all ended up going to the United States. And yeah, the rest is history. There's reasons why we developed the atomic bomb first, even though they were actually ahead of us at the beginning of the war in that area. Those that tried to impose that control maintained a kind of hall monitor position by threatening others with damning labels like sexist, racist, homophobic, Nazi, white supremacist, when the free thinking and questioning was nothing of the sort. However, the mob mentality that followed caused these social convictions when there was often no evidence to support them, she said, while pointing to the book Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. I am neither one extreme or the other, but am one of the millions of people who believe in common sense and that everyone should be free to live their lives however they want, unless that freedom interferes with someone else's freedom to live their own life. That's it, she concluded. Bateman's remarks followed several other celebrities, many of whom supported Harris, to soul search after the Republicans' decisive victory. Do we really believe they have souls? Okay, anyway. The Big Short director and staunch progressive Adam McKay announced that he was abandoning the Democratic Party for the Green Party or Working Class Families Party. Well, good on him. All right. Nobody's got any thoughts. That was either so riveting or so bad that nobody has anything to say. All right. So we talked about before how there's been lots of censorship. There's also been a lot of lying. And again, do not get me wrong. I know that lying happens on both sides. The reason why on this channel I've mostly focused on the lies of the left is because you have a whole media world exposing lies of the right. You really don't need my help with that. But I have found that I do need help sifting through a lot of the things that the left has said. One of the reasons why I became pro-Trump was because I began to believe that many, not all, but many of the corrosive things said about him were lies. As an example, well, I'll just let the Hill and its reporting speak for itself. Adega Outlaw, welcome. Thank you for showing up. I hope that you are doing well, and I hope that you find some of this informative and or entertaining. If y'all would like, please check out Adega Outlaw. He's got a wonderful channel too. Adega says he never has thoughts. They hurt too much. LDG, I speak for most of us, I'm sure. You were batting 1,000. There's nothing to be said. You are riveting, sir. Thank you very much. You are too kind. You're much too kind. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I'm going to play a little something from The Hill, which has become one of my favorite news outlets, partly because, well, I have my reasons. One is that they actually give respect to the libertarian view. To me, that's incredibly refreshing. The other reason is because the main guy there usually has somebody paired with him who doesn't just parrot back what he says. They'll respectfully challenge him back. I love that. I wish there was more of that. If we're if we're not going to just report the news, if we're going to throw out our opinions on top of it, then I want some debate. I don't want some freaking echo chamber. And I believe that that's one of the things that the Hill provides. That, and I just love these capital columns that they have at the beginning and their beginning intro. Let's see what they have to say about CNN, which I've been told never lies. I've been told that by someone who not only said it with a straight face but meant it. Loved the person. I'd take a bullet for them, but respectfully, I doubt that you'll find. I haven't found one yet, but it won't surprise me if I find the Hill lying at one point. So. If that's too loud.
Well, Robbie, what's on your radar?
Well, the dreaded scourge of misinformation is now frequently listed as one of the top concerns of national security experts, Democratic politicians, and media figures. Mainstream news organizations incessantly warn their readers and viewers that right-wing provocateurs, Republican politicians, and even foreign agents are flooding social media with false information. Tech regulators all over the world, from Brazil to the European Union, are using the threat of misinformation as a pretext to engage in censorship. In the US, the First Amendment makes it much more difficult for would-be censors to directly criminalize misinformation, though that won't stop politicians from trying. Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz has already suggested incorrectly that misinformation and hate speech are unprotected forms of expression. This claim itself is an example of misinformation in that it is a false statement. The Supreme Court has steadfastly maintained that hate speech, for example, is protected by the First Amendment. It's been litigated.
All right. So, one, let's see what people are saying in the chat, and two, I think you all know I'm not maybe an absolutist, but when in doubt, speech should be protected. That's pretty much where I'm at. I know that there's the whole you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, et cetera, but by my way of thinking, I would rather err on the side of allowing speech than curbing it. The reason being, just because I don't like what you're saying, that I don't feel like I should have that right to stop you from saying something. Now, of course, I don't like hate speech. I don't know that anybody who's that intelligent likes hate speech, but it is protected. The ACLU made a great big deal in the 60s and 70s, and I think they were right to do so. That, neo-Nazis that got the permits and peacefully marched in a rally, they had the right to do that. I despise neo-Nazis, but they do have the right to their speech. Hate speech must live, and I hate things. Right on. Yelling fire should not matter if the fire alarm system is good enough. Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a good point. And let's face it, if there is a fire, then you're just doing what's smart. Like you say, if that damn fire alarm isn't going to go off, somebody needs to get it out. I wasn't as big on free speech when I was a kid because I had listened to too many people. I was a hardcore right-winger back then. I still call myself a right-winger, but nothing like what I was then. I used to think that, you should be able to regulate pornography, and I suppose there should be some kind of something like, I don't know exactly where the boundary should be, and I obviously don't want children to just be able to walk up to magazine counters and it's right there in front of them. But at the same time, speech should be free. LDG, even if there is a fire, everyone must follow the common sense of even file line and not trample over other people. 100%. We learned this in elementary school. Yeah, exactly. So Robbie on the Hill is warning that possibly people are going to try to double down on regulating quote unquote misinformation. Let's see what if he's got a good example or what he says about that.
Over and over again. It's the exact sort of thing that is protected. Yet when mainstream Democratic political figures express blatantly incorrect opinions, they seldom attract the misinformation label. This speaks to the one-sidedness of the concept, a one-sidedness that was perfectly illustrated during a CNN panel that I caught last night, and it deserves some attention. Now, the topic of the panel, ironically, was misinformation. Former Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson was interviewed by CNN's Wolf Blitzer about the dangers of misinformation and how malicious lies being spread by right-wing actors are eroding trust in U.S. democracy. Blitzer invited several panelists to respond. Maria Cardona, a Democratic strategist, then attacked former President Donald Trump for spreading misinformation and hate speech. Here's what she said, quote, "Let's remember Charlottesville. Let's remember January 6th. All those events ended in tragedy, and all of those events were spurred on and inspired by the words that came out of the former president's mouth," end quote. CNN contributor Scott Jennings, a Republican, then interrupted Cardona to dispute that Trump's rhetoric caused the 2017 rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, where one person was killed and a dozen others injured by a white nationalist. But Cardona doubled down, asserting that Trump went out there and said both sides are good people. Quote, "I do think he caused Charlottesville," she said. "Those people that were marching in support of one person. They were marching in support of Donald Trump." Watch the clip.
All right. So, essentially, I think we've all heard that. And these were lies that I used to believe myself. I had to do a substantial amount of digging because Google no longer throws things out. You know, it used to be if you typed in something, what popped up to the top of the page, you might have 2 or 3 things that were purchased, but then the rest of it had something to do with what you typed in. Now, often it doesn't. And then you have to dig through 2 or 3 pages, and then you finally find, for example, the Snopes article that debunks the very things that I'm sharing here, that basically debunks the whole that Trump tried to inspire a riot. I had to go to page 2 or 3 in order to find that. The first time I looked, anyway. You had page after page of he did it, he said it, he did it, he said it, and then there's a retraction from CNN, and then there's a thing from Snopes, but it's all on the 2nd or 3rd page. So you can, in a way, forgive my liberal friends for believing all this, but at the other hand, if someone like me is able to find it, why aren't more people finding it?
I think that we need to remember exactly his words, that words matter, to your point, Jamal. And Scott, you're right. The former president did get hurt, but it's not the first time. Let's remember Charlottesville. Let's remember January 6th. All of those events ended in tragedy. And all of those events were spurred on and inspired by the words that came out of the former president's mouth.
How did he inspire Charlottesville?
He went out there and said both sides are
that was after
good
the rally.
people.
You said he caused the rally.
Okay, Scott, the words that the former president says, and you know this, you have that skeptical face, but
yes, I'm skeptical that he caused Charlottesville.
This is true. Yes, I do think he did cause Charlottesville, because those people that were
who's causing the rallies on campuses right now?
Those people that were marching.
Who's causing the rallies in the streets of New York?
Let me finish. Those people that were marching in support of one person. They were marching in support of Donald Trump, and they were marching in support of what Donald Trump represents. So you can say, try to both sides it with the rallies that were happening on college campuses.
Well, in my humble opinion, those claims are flagrantly wrong. Trump's rhetoric did not cause a group of white nationalists to organize a rally in Charlottesville. Now, the controversy over Trump's remarks in that case has to do with things he said in response to the rally. Now, there too, critics of Trump overreached. As the fact-checking website Snopes has concluded, Trump never said the neo-Nazis were very fine people. He didn't say it. He said neo-Nazis and white nationalists, quote, should be condemned totally. His fine people on both sides comment referred to the debate over whether it was a good idea to remove statues of problematic historical figures. Trump is right about that. Reasonable people can disagree about the wisdom of taking down the statues and about which historical figures deserve extra scrutiny. If Robert E. Lee goes, is Thomas Jefferson next? And then what about George Washington? What about Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves? Left-wing activists have targeted his statue as well, all of these people, not just the Confederate leaders. Is it a slippery slope? I don't know. It's perfectly fine to discuss that. Now, it's also fine to disagree with Trump's handling of the Charlottesville episode or to think that his condemnations did not go far enough. Sure. But no serious person has suggested that remarks by Trump are what spurred on the racism and the violence in Charlottesville in 2016.
But this trouble is, that's exactly what my friends say. I remember 2-3 years ago, I was getting texts and things from them about how the Proud Boys were basically a Trump organization. And this is something I haven't really looked up deeply into because, well, frankly, I never could find any evidence other than a reporter said so. I always kind of felt like if he really was a big supporter of the Proud Boys, I don't know about you, but if I'm Trump and I want to be a dictator and an oligarch, I have a bunch of rioting Proud Boys in Washington, D.C. I'm going to go to them and say, hey, this is it. This is the time. This is the time for the revolution. Rally around me, and we're going to take this government down. That's what he did not do. And you can say if you want that some of the things he did inspired this or that. That gets into a really fluffy area because you can't really prove or disprove a lot. You know, who knows who inspired anybody to do what? But he never did go on there and say, hey, let's take this government over. Let's take it down. The people who were trying to do that, well, some of them got arrested. Some of them went to jail. I am dubious about whether we got the right people, but that's a discussion for another day. Hello, Darth Plato. Howdy, howdy. Welcome here. I am hoping that you will find some of this entertaining and maybe even somewhat informative. Kind of repeating myself a little bit here. I'm sharing Robbie from the Hill talking about how the left-wing media continues to double down on Trump trying to inspire riots and hatefulness and white supremacy.
2017, the rally was organized by explicit white nationalists. Jason Kessler, Richard Spencer, David Duke was there for the purpose of protesting the removal of Confederate General Robert E. Lee's statue. Their efforts were not inspired by or in defense of Donald Trump. It's simply not true. Perhaps Cardona misremembered what the Charlottesville rally was about or confused it with something else. In any case, what she said on television was completely wrong. It's telling, however, that at no point in that clip I just played you, I watched the whole thing, did Blitzer, the host, jump in to accuse Cardona of spreading misinformation. The job of correcting her was left to the conservative co-panelist Scott Jennings, who did a great job. But keep in mind that this was a panel ostensibly highlighting the toxic spread of misinformation. And that's what is just wrong with this entire concept. People saying, spreading bad information accidentally, deliberately, or via some combination of the two. Motivated reasoning is very powerful. It's nothing new. It's been happening on television, the radio, in print, in books, in everyday conversation, long before social media came into existence. Commentators who fixate on platforms they distrust or partisan actors they dislike frequently treat misinformation like an actual pathogenic disease, all while ignoring falsehoods that arise on their own side or treating those as mere differences of opinion. Just remember, it's only misinformation when the other guy does it. And I tend not to get worked up about everything I see on cable news that is wrong. And I don't even watch that much. I just catch the clips on social media. But I'm like, I'm going to catch up from my vacation, turn on the TV, flipping back and forth between Fox, CNN, and MSNBC. And I'm just kind of like half-heartedly paying attention and I'm making dinner. And I'm like, wait, is she saying the Trump comment is what caused Charlottesville? Again, that's just wrong. The criticism of Trump was about his response.
All right. People saying hello to each other, and I wouldn't remove Confederate monuments if they predate the 1950s. No, I actually would agree with that. If it was done before, I don't know about the 50s, but it's there would be a cutoff date to me. Like if it was put up after 1960, yeah, fine, take it down because it doesn't mean the same thing that it meant back then. Darth Plato, this guy needs to fire his writing staff. Are you talking about Robbie or somebody else? Let's see. I will skip ahead a little bit because I like that she had some things to say. Not exactly countering him, but at least giving a little bit of pushback.
Lie can pass around the world by the time you tie your shoelaces, that old line. It happens like in a heartbeat now. And many years later, because Charlottesville is 2017, you have Maria Cardona, who is on TV a lot, saying a lot of things. I don't always agree with her. We had a nice back and forth during the Bernie-Hillary time, and I think she had some looseness with her facts as well then. But with that being said, like, you have to, there needs to be standards when you go on these shows. And I understand you're not going to be perfect at all times. You don't have all the information, and sometimes these conversations go off in different tangents, but it is important. There's a duty to the audience to try to provide as much information as possible. And at least maybe somebody in her ear was telling her, actually, that was the wrong quote. That was from a different time. They did wear red hats, though. I mean, we do remember when they were marching through the streets, it was a flood of MAGA hats. So did he incite it directly? No. Do Donald Trump's vibes create an environment where that's more likely to happen? Possibly.
Well, Richard Spencer, he's a former white nationalist. He just endorsed Kamala Harris.
I don't understand
David Duke is a Jill Stein supporter. So it's the prominent people involved here are not even backing Donald Trump. Funny enough, but I think it's interesting. Just I don't mind how they handled it. She said what she said. Scott Jennings said, well, that's why that's not true, and that's how those things can go. We're hosting a television show. We could quarrel with guests, let people, that's fine. But it just gets to me what gets counted as misinformation. Because I'm sure if J.D. Vance was being interviewed on CNN, like we've watched this numerous times in recent weeks, he says something that the host thinks is wrong or misinformation. They cut in immediately and say, well, actually, it's not Haitians. Those were not pet. Like they'll correct that.
President, though.
Yeah, but where here she said something that was just totally wrong, and here it's, well, go ahead, debate it. I don't feel like you know how I mean these things are treated differently. Yeah. That's just what I'm pointing out.
I mean, there's a standard. If you're running for president and vice president and you're making claims and you said it on a debate stage, yes, that should be fact checked. I still think Maria Cardona has a duty to have as much information as possible and at least apologize and say, it's a little distracting.
Now, me, I would have been okay with them fact checking if they had just fact checked both sides. That's what irritates the crap out of me. Darth Plato, there's a crush of new Confederate monuments after the Civil Rights Movement to stick the finger in the eye of improving race relations, and I don't respect that. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. The Civil Rights Movement was, I believe, at least no movement's perfect. I think it was mostly a positive thing and a direction that we needed to go in. And yeah, just putting up Confederate things just to irritate the blacks. No, that's not cool. Now, if you want to remember your history, and I'm not saying we should put up statues, but if you want to remember your history and if you want to have honor and respect for, there were brave Confederate soldiers. You might not agree with the side they took, and that's okay, because at least when it comes to slavery, I'm absolutely on the north side. When it comes to states' rights, I'm actually a little bit on the south side, but I also feel like it's disingenuous to say, well, I'm all about states' rights, but I'm not about slavery, but yet that war was about the states' right for slavery. So even though I'm kind of a states' rightist myself, I don't see. I see it as being equivocal to say that the South was right in that war. Again, no side's ever perfectly right or perfectly wrong, but and I know that there's very intelligent people who will disagree with me, but I do feel like the moral right was pretty solidly on the side of the North in the Civil War. I just hate that it happened. Wish that we could have figured out how to get rid of slavery without a war. I'll go ahead and if you want to watch the rest of this, you can. But essentially, he's pointing out that there's people are just too prone to just say that it's disinformation if it disagrees with me, and we need to ban it because it's dangerous. And maybe we don't need to ban everybody all over the place. Maybe the solution for bad speech is better speech. I'm also going to share another one of the things that I had originally thought was true and came to believe to be a lie. Obviously, the Trump inspiring neo-Nazis, I've become convinced that that's not true. That it's a lie that he inspired. There may have been MAGA people in that movement, but as was pointed out, there's also Democrats and Kamala supporters in that movement. John Bolton says he didn't hear Trump insult fallen soldiers in France. I don't know if this will play. Okay, so yeah, this is the lie, or this is the thing that I've come to believe to be a lie, that he called soldiers losers. Former White House National Security Advisor John Bolton said in comments published Friday, he never heard President Trump refer to slain American soldiers buried at a French cemetery as losers and suckers after the allegations were made in a bombshell report published Thursday. I didn't hear that, Bolton told the New York Times. I'm not saying he didn't say them later in the day or another time, but I was there for that discussion. Bolton's remarks came after Trump himself denied any allegations of disrespectful comments toward American soldiers killed in action, which were first reported by The Atlantic's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg. I would be willing to swear on anything that I never said that about our fallen heroes, Trump said to the press as he was exiting Air Force One early Friday. There's nobody that respects them more, so I just think it's a horrible, horrible thing. No animal, nobody. What animal would say such a thing? The Atlantic reported that Trump bailed on his appearance at Ain Marne American Cemetery in 2018 due to concerns that rain would dishevel his hair. Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers. Trump also allegedly told aides before canceling his trip to Bellu, France. Several White House staff and Trump campaign aides denied the president ever made the comments. Bolton's defense of the president comes just months after his release of his memoir, The Room Where It Happened, which offered a behind-the-scenes look at Trump's discourse with officials in the White House. Bolton served as national security advisor for Trump from April 2018 to September 2019. He served as the 25th U.S. ambassador to the United Nations from 2005 to 2006 during the Bush administration. Trump in 2015 garnered criticism after mocking late Senator John McCain, who was captured and tortured by North Vietnamese forces during the Vietnam War, saying he preferred people who weren't captured and aren't losers. And so, yeah, he said that thing about John McCain. As far as I know, I think I remember hearing him say that, but he did not say that about troops or people in general. Was it inflammatory and wrong to say it about John McCain? I would suggest that it was. But that doesn't mean that we should then invent that he said it 5 other times in 20 more inappropriate ways. The famous Lee statue from 1890 in Richmond was removed in 2021 due to the George Floyd craziness. It's all based on vulgar historiography. Yeah. All righty. Now, if you noticed, I'm not going in any particular order. I'm just kind of just sharing what I've found and what I feel like sharing. As you all know, for good or ill, Trump is putting together a temporary Doge organization being headed up by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. And again, I'm showing too much of my partisanship here. Probably I'm sharing too much from Fox and the Hill, but I thought that this was really fascinating.
Tackling this kind of waste, fraud, abuse, bureaucratic bloat, we're going for the stuff that's basic common sense that most Americans actually agree on. And I hope we're going to actually be able to help unite the country by eliminating waste, which is something that all Americans, regardless of partisan affiliation, can get behind. And that's how Elon and I are thinking about it.
Well, that was Vivek Ramaswamy touting the new Department of Government Efficiency that he and Elon Musk will be running. Now, also known as Doge, this temporary agency will partner with the White House and Office of Management and Budget to drive structural government change from outside the government. Now, they put out their first messaging on X yesterday, writing this: working overtime to ensure your tax dollars will be spent wisely. So what have we been spending some of our federal funds on? Let's review. Almost $550,000 went to a Russian lab to run experiments on cats' brains. That was spent by the National Institutes of Health. $3.7 million of funding went to a study on monkeys and gambling, another NIH fascinating project. And the State Department.
I actually might remember that study. It doesn't so much bother me that some of this stuff happens, but at the same time, do we really need to fund a study in Russia? I mean, why don't we keep the money here and study the cats here? I'm just asking the question. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't study cats' brains, but do we really have to study Russian? Or do we really have to fund Russian study of cats' brains?
Department awarding tens of thousands of dollars for drag shows in Ecuador. And that's just the tip of the wasteful spending iceberg. Here's Senator James Langford rattling off just a few government spending projects at a House hearing last year. Watch.
Last year, the State Department.
This is a legislator from my own home state. I know that it's a little bit controversial because he tried to reach across the aisle and help create a bill, and that bill was shot down. At the risk of sounding like an equivocator, I'm on his side as far as, yes, we need to reach across the aisle and try to get a bill passed, but I'm also in favor of not passing the bill because in spite of his best efforts, there were really things in there that I myself could not tolerate. But I'm not going to criticize him too badly on that because the guy was trying to get something bipartisan.
Did a grant to Ecuador to host 12 drag shows in Ecuador with American tax dollars. Now, may have different opinions in this room on drag shows. I'm just asking the simple question: is the best use of American tax dollars to actually fund drag shows in Ecuador with U.S. tax dollars? National Science Foundation last year did a study of butterflies in Europe. So we funded with American taxpayer dollars. Last year, there was also a NEA grant that was done to set up a display in Brooklyn for the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Which, to be fair, I love the Beatles, so I think I'd actually be a little bit okay with that. But at the same time, when there's soldiers going homeless and people that are starving, maybe not the best use of our money.
Which, by the way, is not even an American band. We had an almost, $350,000 grant to study smart toilets was one of the grants.
Man, LDG, you need a grant writer. We so need to be getting some of this tax money because at least one, it would be spent here in America, and two, it would be helping to promote liberty and freedom.
That we actually paid for with our federal tax dollars last year. We also had a grant that was done studying colonial Mexican soundscapes. We last year did a study on helmets and seatbelts in Ghana to be able to study whether seatbelts and helmets were effective for saving lives in Ghana. Can I just go ahead and answer that question for free? Seatbelts and helmets are a good idea. They save lives. Free.
Well, and what do you think about that? Let's see. Is there anything else in here that was maybe worth sharing or talking about? I think you got the gist of it. We don't tend to spend money very wisely on the federal level. Let's see. I am going to skip ahead and see if there's. I think there's something cool here, but if I don't find it soon, I'll skip to the next thing.
Let's do a little more examples of this squander of what your money, guys, the government's money, that is your money. So let's show you a few more things of outrageousness that our tax dollars are being spent on. $100,000 to see if a sunfish is more aggressive when given gin or tequila.
Oh my gosh.
1 million.
That's my favorite right there. We absolutely need to know if sunfish are more aggressive on gin or tequila. That's a must have. See, that's $100,000 that could have gone to LDG Free the Net.
$1 to see if selfies make you happy. 1.
I can answer that one. Selfies do not make me happy whatsoever. Well, maybe if I was better looking. Mark Malnikoff, Kapla, and I agree, defund the deep state. Not the police, the deep state, please. Oh.
$5 million to study the mating calls of country frogs to see if they are different than city frogs. That, Cheryl, is what hardworking Americans' tax dollars are going to.
Oh, I have more. Why is the University of...
And sadly, it seems to me like studying the mating calls of the country frogs to see if they're different from city frogs so far seems like the best use of the money the government's made in this list.
Mississippi spending $12 million for monkeys on meth. And why did the EPA spend $620 grand for armor and night vision?
I so want to study monkeys on meth. That would be fun. I'm in the wrong business. I need to break out my grant writer's guide and see what I can dig up. Some of you guys out here have degrees. We can dream up some study that we can say we're doing, right? We could get 1.5 million. We could spend $500,000 of it on frogs and use the other $1 million for, our important lifestyles. Because, you can't be depressed when you're studying frogs, right? You got to be in a good frame of mind.
Equipment. Somebody explained that one to me, but I'll tell you what, the biggest one that killed me was the fact that the IRS between October of 21 and 23.
This is what I really want you guys to hear. I'm going to back up just a little bit. That you're going to love this. You're going to love this.
October of 21 and 23. They've got $50 million in unpaid taxes from their own employees. Somebody explain that. The biggest IRS between October.
Let me play that again.
Of 21 and 23. They've got $50 million over 21 and 23.
I'm still not
explain that one to me, but I'll tell you what, the biggest one that killed me was the fact that the IRS between October of 21 and 23. They've got $50 million in unpaid taxes from their own employees.
Whoa!
IRS employees owe $50 million in back taxes. I want that. I want the IRS so gutted at this point. And Elon Musk, remember what he did with Twitter.
Now I haven't confirmed that, but it just sounds about right. I had a good friend of mine, ironically, is one of my liberal friends. IRS went after him. He ended up having to pay several thousand more, and he ended up okay because he's actually very smart with his finances and stuff. He had the money, but it sure as hell hurt, and even though I've been hopping up and down about the guy. I do love the guy. The IRS, in my humble opinion, had no need to go after him. Any mistakes he's made were all honest and didn't hurt anybody. But I'll do my own study of sunfish. Does pan fried with gin or tequila make them taste better? See, if we just had the right grant writer, we could do that. Mark, share with me somewhere what your degree is. We'll dream up some reason why you deserve a grant for that. Okay. So I'm going to quit hammering you over the head with my right-wing conservative stuff. I'm going to share one of the more, in my humble opinion, one of the more reasonable left-wing takes on what happened with the election. This is Jon Stewart. Sometimes I like him, sometimes I can't stand him. With this one, I find myself somewhat neutral, but I think it's interesting that he at least is trying to be objective. So I'm going to give him points for that. And he has a different take on how the Democrats lost than either the right or most of the people on the left have. Let's see what you think about what he has to say. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit, though. What the hell? Yeah. I kind of feel like that's the way it kind of is. There's lots of resistance, yes. There's lots of lies thrown around and mudslinging. And again, that's on both sides. But I think it's just interesting that we're told that democracy is over. We're never going to have an election again. And I love that he's making fun of that, because the truth is, even if Kamala had won, as seriously as I took some of her things about free speech, I at least want to believe that we would have somehow endured those 4 years. I hope we would have had more dignity at our loss than some on the left have had during theirs. And I hope that people would eventually have come back around and realized that if nothing else, free speech has got to stay strong. And I'm gratified that evidently a fair number of people agreed with that. I do think that free speech was a big reason why Donald Trump won.
Back out to the thing. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. And the areas around those areas.
Yeah, according to Elon Musk on X, the Dems had about roughly $500 million more than the Republicans had. So unless that's incorrect, it was not money that won this election. Yeah, I'm not saying don't do that at all, but $250 million spent on that does seem to be, to me, a misappropriation of funds. You could have spent that on, hell, billboards would have been better. Online ads. I know they had a crap ton of online ads, but they could have made them better. They could have ran that letter writing campaign that they had from Nerds for Kamala, spent more money and made that more spiffy and amazing.
You know what Democrats should do? Whatever money is left over.
And there's none. I don't know if any of you have heard, but the Kamala Harris campaign is out of money, and Trump is actually offering to pay their back debts.
And I'm glad.
And this is a great line. I just have to pause and relish what he's about to do. That the economy, which even though I didn't talk about that, to me that was kind of a zeroth assumption that the economy was the big reason why so many people voted against the Democrats. Hey, Kimmy Kibb, how are you? Welcome, welcome. I hope you find some of this mildly entertaining, maybe even informative. I'm sharing Jon Stewart's thoughts on why Trump won the election. I'm not saying that Trump ran a terrible campaign, but I don't know that he ran a wonderfully brilliant campaign. But he won as if he had. Aw, Kimmy Kibb is not bad. Thank you. You're very kind. Thank you for being here. Let's see. Yeah, and it's also true that the Democrats did lose a great opportunity about talking about Arnold Palmer and his manhood. All right, I'm going to, if you would like to watch the rest of it, please feel free. I'm going to go on to the next thing. Not that he doesn't have more cool things to say, but honestly, I just don't want YouTube to be like, oh, you can't have that. I probably played plenty of it as it is. One of the other things that I think happened was the terrible response that FEMA gave. Now, I know that there was a lot of quote unquote disinformation. I know that there was exaggeration about how bad some of the FEMA response was. But we're learning after the fact that maybe it wasn't quite as exaggerated as we've been told. Kimmy Kibb likes the comment, focus less on who is woke, more on who is broke. Yes. And yes, if my son could not find a job and was spending all of his time online vaping, I too would vote Republican forevermore. But we have learned since the last couple of days, FEMA worker speaks out after telling staff to avoid pro-Trump homes. Marnie Washington, a former FEMA reservist, was recently dismissed after instructing volunteers to avoid homes displaying Trump signs in Florida post-Hurricane Milton. Public backlash erupted following a leaked text chain showing her directive, which Washington asserts was meant to protect her team from potential hostility. She now alleges that FEMA scapegoated her, claiming the agency's approach wasn't limited to Florida, but extended to other states like North Carolina. So, evidently, there was an official implement best practices. No one goes anywhere alone. Avoid homes advertising Trump. Yeah. We all can see how fair and two-sided and uniting this last 4 years administration has been. Oh, that's okay, Connie. No, I know. It's cool. If Trump had lost, that FEMA thing would have been swept under the rug 100%. You know it would have. And I can't remember if I don't think I have it up on the thing, but I know somebody was stating, you know, that's one of the texts that we know about. How about all the things that were swept under the rug? So another person who I think has some very relevant things to say is Bernie Sanders. The Independent is talking about him here. He doubles down that people are angry with the Dems after Pelosi said she didn't respect his remarks. Let's see if this will play. If it doesn't, then it doesn't look like it's going to play. Bernie Sanders has doubled down on his scathing remarks about the Democratic Party having abandoned working class voters, despite criticism from longtime friend and ally Nancy Pelosi. The veteran Vermont senator reiterated that the U.S. working class is angry, but rejected the idea that the issue this election cycle has been with party messaging. In a statement after Trump sailed to victory over Kamala Harris, Sanders wrote that it should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them. Speaking to the New York Times, former House Speaker and Democratic powerhouse Nancy Pelosi then slammed his remarks, saying she did not agree or respect them. Sanders was asked about his comments and Pelosi's reaction to them on the Sunday Politics show, where he said he absolutely stood by what he had said. Speaking to MSNBC, that great bastion of objectivity, Meet the Depressed, about Pelosi's remarks, he said, Nancy is a friend of mine. We've worked together on many issues, but here's the reality. I have to say to Nancy, in the Senate, in the last 2 years, we've not even brought forth legislation to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, despite the fact that some 20 million people in this country are working for less than $15 an hour. Bottom line, if you're an average working person out there, do you really think that the Democratic Party is going to the mat and fighting for you? I think the overwhelming answer is no. And that is what has got to change. In a separate interview on CNN's State of the Union, Sanders said that the President, Joe Biden, had kept his word to working class people, but that as a whole, the demographic is angry and they have a reason to be angry. I don't know if I agree that Biden kept his word, but I'm sure that's debatable. Yeah, and the internet is trying to embarrass me. What Donald Trump did is he provided an explanation, he said, also rejecting the claim that messaging and communication with the working class had been the problem for the Democrats. It's not messaging. It's a fundamental understanding of saying, look, the Biden administration has done a lot of good things, period. We should all be proud of that. But it has to be put in the broad context of the reality of the American economy today, he said. Sanders' remarks came as the upper echelons of the Democrat Party became further embroiled in a blame game following the Harris campaign's crushing defeat. A gamut of reasons have since been offered for the cause. Some Democrats think swapping Biden for Harris was the mistake. I would suggest maybe they should have had an actual legitimate primary to begin with, put actual viable candidates up and had the American people vote for them. And then, you might have had, I don't know, I don't even know who, but Buttigieg or help an old man out. The guy who I always get mixed up with the right-wing guy. Anyway, you would have had viable candidates, possibly, or you would have had a better shot at having viable candidates. Others have blamed Biden himself, saying he took far too long to drop out. Progressives like Sanders have pointed to the Biden administration's stance on Israel, the Harris campaign's attempts to appeal to moderates. Yeah, because, she appealed to moderates so much, and anti-Trump Republicans. The Independent is the world's most free-thinking news brand, providing global news, blah, 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 blah. So there it is. So, people saying hi, Kimmy Kib. I know a lot of my female friends are genuinely scared from Trump getting in. And I understand that, but I don't mean to poo-poo it because I'm not a woman, but I don't think they have anything to worry about, because I think if they had anything to worry about, I think he would have done something then. But I don't want to poo-poo it, because the best way to get everyone upset and not listening to you is to be dismissive of a differing view. Now I'm going to share pointless stuff on X that I found. A lot of it will be politically motivated. Some of it won't. According to the leading report, 64% of Native Americans voted for Trump. So I don't know if that's true, but that's very interesting if they did. Rob Schneider. Hey, Jimmy Kimmel. It's me, Wheezy, the unvaccinated person. All right, sorry about that. Cassie vehemently decided she wanted some attention. So things got unplugged for a second. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Let me know if you can hear me now. Testing, 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 testing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Well, until somebody answers, I'm going to share video. There she is. That's where she wanted to be. She got very pushy and shoved her way through the mic wire. So, anyway. All right. So you can hear me now. Let me know if you can hear me well enough. I'll continue reading Rob Schneider's angry diatribe toward Jimmy Kimmel. Now, some of my liberal friends probably don't understand this, but I've gotten sick to death of not all, but most of the late night TV people. As long as they don't talk about politics, their jokes are often funny. When they start talking about politics, I've gotten where I just kind of shut them out. I heard enough about how bad Trump is. And frankly, I think this is a part of where the Dems have gone wrong. You've been trying to brainwash us for 12 years now. I don't want to hear it anymore. I really don't. If the Dems want to remain viable, they need to come up with an actual vision. They need to actually start sharing that to the Americans, especially the American working class. Just Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad. It's not going to keep your party viable any longer. I know it worked 4 years ago, or something worked 4 years ago. It's not going to work now. Rob Schneider to Jimmy Kimmel. It's me, Wheezy, the unvaccinated person who a few years ago you said you didn't want doctors to help if I was in the hospital, but would rather have me die in the hospital corridor. Yeah, ha ha, really funny joke, Mr. Kimmel. Kind of disgusting, actually. That was hard to watch because we were censored and kicked off social media if we dared question the government's narrative. But you weren't censored. You were free to say whatever you wanted, including making those who disagree with you get more attacked and feel more isolated. But the other night's emotional monologue of yours was not as hard to watch. Please save your tears for the American mom and dad who for the last 4 years, because of Democrat policies, had to decide whether they should buy groceries or fill their gas tank so they could either feed their families or drive their children to school and then drive to work because they couldn't afford both. You see, it's easy for you and Oprah to lecture hardworking American parents who both have to work to make ends meet and live paycheck to paycheck because you and Oprah are rich, fly private planes, and if food prices go up to 26%, it doesn't affect you or your family at all. If the price of avocados went up to $5,000, you and Oprah would just eat $5,000 guacamole. Wealthy liberal elites who live in guard-gated communities are immune from the destructive democratic policies that have so deteriorated our nation's cities. The average American family is not afforded that same luxury and safety. I would say a better focus of your emotions would be on repairing your Democratic Party that moved so far left that they left the American people behind. So you're mistaken in your monologue when you said that Americans who voted for Trump made a mistake too. No, sir. The American people made a correction against policies that they could no longer stomach and policies that their country could no longer afford. And it was an overwhelming majority of Americans who made their choice. A choice for a better, more affordable America where free speech is not under attack, but reaffirmed. Make no mistake, this election is an overwhelming and clear mandate for change, and change is needed, and change is coming. I sincerely wish you and all the people who voted differently than me all my very best. I will continue to cheer for your success and for the success of all Americans. Respectfully, Rob Schneider. Mark Melnikoff, those elite who have no honor. I don't know Klingon, but that sounds exactly correct, whatever that means. The elite Petok who have no honor. But I know that good and kind people, who I'm not going to say are unintelligent, but I think maybe misinformed, they're the ones that will say that Trump has no honor. And then by association, that means that we who voted for him have no honor. Eric Weinstein. Are you also watching the brain trust of the Democrat Party who lost this election, now trying to figure out how they could possibly have lost this election? As a highly visible Democrat who never thought this was going to be a close or nail-biter, who said publicly that the polls were off and that there was reason to think that preference falsification could result in a landslide, do you think anyone would pick up the phone and call? There's zero interest, not one intern, not one consultant. I'll skip the next part about string theory. It interests me, but it might not interest you. Listening to what Maddow has to say about Kamala Harris' part in Speaker Pelosi's brilliant strategy with Pete Buttigieg to help Senator Schumer and Don Lemon's insightful analysis mirroring Joy Veridaut, brutal truths following the NPR and CNN exposes of Trump, devious plans is exactly the wrong vibe. What does Kumrun say about Andy's latest idea to build on Lenny's insight to get around Ava's paper showing that Ashok's plan, basically he's talking about the echo chamber that's going on in the physics community and relaying it to the regular world. This is what a cult sounds like. Communists build such elaborate circular worlds of internal references, as do members of spiritual, academic, and religious orders. Now, I know I've heard for years now that the right sounds like a cult, and don't get me wrong. There's aspects of it, there are definitely corners of it that are guilty, and we do need to keep a spotlight on that. But I think that the left is just as guilty, and my friends who are just listening to the left are just as guilty. My claim is that the Democratic leadership is a lucrative cult. It's not a party. It's not trying to win. It's trying to serve its members and work towards winning as little as possible, consistent with first serving the personal needs of its senior leadership. I disagree with him a little bit there, but it is, I think, more about money than about votes. It's trying to pay its leadership in riches, prestige, and control. It's a payout system. What are all these people making financially? I don't know. Nancy does all right. So does Rachel. But not all payment is monetary. That is why their conversation is so bizarre. They need to fire each other. But the entire point of our party, as they see it, is to serve as a trough. Take it from a pre-Dick Morris Democrat who focused on physics. The 1992 election 32 years ago brought us this madness, just the way that Ed Witten, Michael Green, and John Schwartz brought us the holy revelation of string theory. The most important part of these cults is sealing out the critics as interloping, self-promoting, grifting charlatans. I'd love to come on MSNBC and discuss my pre-election claims that this was unlikely to be close and quite possibly a landslide. I'd love to help the party fire its senior leadership. It is well past time to overthrow the party's brain trust that leads us away from focusing on the welfare of working families, free speech, individualistic greatness, common sense, consumer protection, fair play, and into the arms of evil and madness. The Clinton-Morris era needs to end. We need a revolt to overthrow our lords and masters. There is now no reason these people should be at the helm. This is Russell Brand. I thought I would share this. All these pictures look pretty similar, don't they? On the left, former FDA commissioner in charge of regulating Johnson & Johnson. On the right, current member of the board of directors of Johnson & Johnson. That's Mark McClellan. Scott Gottlieb on the left, former FDA commissioner in charge of regulating Pfizer. On the right, current member of the board of directors of Pfizer. Stephen Hahn on the left, former FDA commissioner in charge of regulating Moderna. On the right, current chief medical officer of Flagship Pioneering, venture capital firm behind Moderna. James C. Smith on the left, CEO of Reuters, in charge of informing people about the COVID-19 vaccines. On the right, current member of the board of directors of Pfizer. And of course, Anthony Fauci, our beloved favorite. I'd still love to talk more about him someday, but maybe, I don't know if people really want to hear it. On the left is the NIAID director under the National Institutes of Health. On the right is the funder of bioweapons research on gain-of-function bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Let's skip up ahead a little bit. We talked about Justine Bateman. Again, this may not be right, but Donald Trump tweeted, "I'm very surprised the Democrats who fought a hard and valiant fight in the 2020 presidential election, raising a record amount of money, don't have lots of money left now." And now they're being squeezed by vendors and others. Whatever we can do to help them during this difficult period, I would strongly recommend we as a party, and for the sake of desperately needed unity, we have a lot of money left over, and our biggest asset in the campaign was earned media. That doesn't cost very much. Make America great again. I have no idea. That may be false, but I thought that was interesting. Elon Musk shared the real loser was not the puppet, but rather the big government machine behind the puppet. Kamala Harris lost, they say, in a landslide, but she won in a landslide in Washington, D.C. 92.4% voted for her, only 6.7% for Donald Trump, and 0.8% for Robert Kennedy, who, as most of you know, was my man, was my candidate. I also thought I'd share this. Elon Musk, historical guilt is dumb. Your ancestors weren't villains. Here's a American pioneer. He's got a little doll hidden behind him to give to his daughter. My family were pioneers. I know a lot of yours were too. don't apologize for them to people who hate you. I thought I would also share this from the Joe Rogan Experience.
Then they have the nerve to I hate them so much. And I really think they deserve it. And it's not just that they lie about everything. It's like they lie about everything. And then they have the nerve to morally judge us. Like if you just watch even just the last few weeks of the Trump election, they're not in the business of reporting the news. They're totally just in the business of making you feel like you're a bad person if you don't fall in line with the regime. America has this giant war machine, right? Like we're just always at war. We're the most war-hungry country in the world. Even if we're taking a little bit of a break from a war, we'll fight 2 more proxy wars while we do that. America looks back at the 90s, Bill Clinton, as the time of peace and prosperity. We call it peace because we only fought a war in like Serbia and had a blockade around Iraq and were like bombing the crap out of Iraq with a few other military interventions in there too. You know, the UN estimated that Bill Clinton's sanction and bombing regime of Iraq, okay, everyone just thinks of George H.W. Bush's war and W's war, but Bill Clinton was bombing Iraq his whole, and you had a full block.
Yeah, and I know I'm making this really partisan, but the long and the short is we've been almost continuously at war for roughly half of my lifetime. And as far as I can see, we've had nothing to show for it.
Around the country. The UN estimated that 500,000 children died of starvation or malnutrition due to the blockade. Now, I've heard people argue, by the way, that that number is exaggerated. Maybe it wasn't 500,000. Maybe it was only 100,000. So that's the time that we consider peace, when we were just starving 100,000 children to death in Iraq. And you, everybody in the corporate media, are in the business. Every single one of those wars, you've sold them. Everyone, my entire life, the media has sold those wars. And you're going to morally look down on me? You're going to judge me? Motherfucker, you're in the business of baby murder. Get the fuck out of here. You're looking down, judging an American because maybe I'm going to vote for Donald Trump, or maybe I dare to question the results of the last election. Fuck you, dude.
Yeah, mirrors a lot of what I want to say. At any rate, the Kifness free advice to the DNC. You don't need $1 billion. You don't need to pay 1,000 celebrities to endorse your candidate. You don't even need the media on your side. Just find someone who is reasonable. You can talk on a podcast for 3 hours. This from the redheaded libertarian. She says that she loves it here on Twitter. Derek, I've cut ties with my MAGA father and sister. I will never ever speak to them again. I'll spit on their graves. If you still hang out with your friends or family that voted for fascism, you need a long look in the mirror. Matt Walsh response. This is so important and so inspiring. My cousin voted for Trump, so I blew up his car and set his house on fire. That's what he gets for choosing hate instead of love. I just wish he was compassionate and tolerant like me. Let's see. I'm going to skip up to this. I think this cartoon is pretty salient. I think we have a good shot of winning. Here the reporter says, still more disqualifying rhetoric from Donald Trump as he now vows to shoot his way back into the White House. And again, mine were worried and afraid. I agree with this headline. Turns out he isn't Hitler. You're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine. I will say this. I know that some of you are worried, and if it does look like this is all turning toward true Nazism, then I'll just shut the hell up and go away, because, you know, I will have been profoundly wrong. But I don't. This does not show me. I know it may just be a photo op or whatever, but that, you know, you have the Jewish cross in the background. You have people with disabilities. and they're loving and kind. They love him. Maybe they know something we don't. I'll skip this one. Because you guys have probably already heard all the screaming and ranting. I do want to share this one though.
People did not choose grocery prices over your human rights. People chose grocery prices over your delusions that your rights were being taken away in the first place. Nobody is taking away your rights. Trump was already president, and he didn't take away gay marriage. He didn't enact a national abortion ban. So stop scolding working class people because they didn't prioritize your delusions over their ability to put food on the table. The people who talk so much about privilege don't seem to understand what a privileged position it is to be in, to be able to prioritize your own delusions that your rights are being taken away, to be able to prioritize that over your ability to put food on the table. I see so many people doing anything but reflecting on why the Democrat Party's message was such a resounding failure with the American people this election cycle. This was a sweeping red wave because people are tired of prioritizing fake issues. People are tired of coddling adults who demand that everybody prioritize their feelings over everyone else's ability to feed themselves.
Okay. I'll skip that one too. I'm going to pay attention to the chat though. John, I agree. The Kiffness for inauguration night. Let's skip up ahead. This has nothing to do with politics. Maybe the only thing I've got that isn't politically related, but I just love this. The little dog sneaking kisses. That is fantastic. In fact, I should just put this on loop and play this for the whole thing. This was Lily Tang Williams, who lost, but made such a great speech, even though it was in broken English. We already talked about, well, actually, no, we didn't talk about this one. Did we? Or did we? Yes. Okay. So the article that's in there, Bernie Sanders blasts Democrats for their attitudes toward Joe Rogan. Sanders joined CNN's State of the Union, where he was asked by host Dana Bash about the blowback he received years ago after appearing on Rogan's podcast and receiving his endorsement. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Look, you're going to have an argument with Rogan, agree with him, disagree with him, but what's the problem with going on those shows? It's hard for me to understand that, Sanders said. And this is something I never understood either. How is Rogan so bad? Nobody's explained that to me. Reagan endorsed President-elect Trump just a day before Election Day. Trump sat for an interview with Rogan late last month. The two talked for nearly 3 hours. Trump ally Elon Musk, who also appeared on the show ahead of the election. Vice President Harris's campaign did not pass on an interview with Rogan, but said she would not come to his Texas-based studio. Rogan said he would have had to travel to her. That would have only been able to sit for an hour time slot, so the interview didn't happen. Harris was criticized for not appearing on his show. After the brutal election loss, Democrats are left pointing fingers, trying to figure out where they went wrong. Some say not doing the Rogan interview is a missed opportunity for Harris to reach a younger male demographic. Sanders argued Sunday that more candidates need to be reaching the millions and millions of viewers that watch alternative media. The Vermont senator noted he received backlash from the Democratic establishment when he sat for an interview with Rogan during the primary. I don't see a problem in doing that. And neither do I. I don't understand why it's so bad. Why does that make Sanders bad? I'm going to skip that one. Here's one that I think is interesting.
Remember him? They even had, and 20 million went to their little concerts with Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Christina Aguilera, John Bon Jovi. Remember him? They even had to cancel a performance by Alanis Morissette because they were running low on cash. Isn't that ironic? And 20 million.
All right, I'm going to skip that one, even though it interested me. This was something that I'd never seen before. President Trump was banned from YouTube January 21 to March of 23. He was therefore forced to post new policy videos to Rumble, such as this one, which went viral today, but it's actually from December of 22. You didn't see this video about censorship because he was censored. How long is this? It's about 6 minutes. Let's go ahead and share that.
If we don't have free speech, then we just don't have a free country. It's as simple as that. If this most fundamental right is allowed to perish, then the rest of our rights and liberties will topple just like dominoes, one by one. They'll go down. That's why today I'm announcing my plan to shatter the left-wing censorship regime and to reclaim the right to free speech for all Americans. And reclaim is a very important word in this case because they've taken it away. In recent weeks, bombshell reports have confirmed that a sinister group of deep state bureaucrats, Silicon Valley tyrants, left-wing activists, and depraved corporate news media have been conspiring to manipulate and silence the American people. They have collaborated to suppress vital information on everything from elections to public health. The censorship cartel must be dismantled and destroyed, and it must happen immediately.
And while I get that if you're on the other side of the aisle, that sounds pretty bombastic and pretty threatening, I don't know that I disagree with it, because if the only thing that's being allowed to be shared on the air is lies, then are we really a well-informed public? And we can't have a republic if we don't have a well-informed public. Rogan had more things today about Harris's interview demands. I did not know that. Kaplaw, Space Fraggle, welcome, welcome. I learned not to discuss politics. Cost my lifelong friend when he called me a terrorist for being a Democrat after 9/11. I'm sorry about that. I get what you're saying there. And sadly, yeah, as much as I'm hopping up and down about the Democrats, yeah, there's definitely stupidity on the other side of the aisle too. RFK Jr. posted this a few days back on YouTube. It was confusing. It seemed new at first glance. Oh, okay. But yes, welcome, Space Fraggle. I'm not going to call you a terrorist for being a Democrat. Or if you voted for Kamala, I'm not going to call you names for that. That's just foolishness.
Here's my plan. First, within hours of my inauguration, I will sign an executive order banning any federal department or agency from colluding with any organization, business, or person to censor, limit, categorize, or impede the lawful speech of American citizens. I will then ban federal money from being used to label domestic speech as mis or disinformation. And I will begin the process of identifying and firing every federal bureaucrat who has engaged in domestic censorship, directly or indirectly, whether they are the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Health, Human Services, the FBI, the DOJ, no matter who they are. Second, I will order the Department of Justice to investigate all parties involved in the new online censorship regime, which is absolutely destructive and terrible, and to aggressively prosecute any and all crimes identified. These include possible violations of federal civil rights law, campaign finance laws, federal election law, securities law, and antitrust laws, the Hatch Act, and a host of other potential criminal, civil, regulatory, and constitutional offenses. To assist in these efforts, I am urging House Republicans to immediately send preservation letters, and we have to do this right now.
All right. I will let you look up the rest of that if you want to listen to the rest of that. I know it sounds bombastic and threatening. I don't like the tone, but I like the thought that we can't allow the government to censor, and those that have censored do need to be held accountable. My friends that have popped up and down and said there's all this censorship on the right and that the right needs to be held accountable for their censorship. It's true on the other side too. To me, the censorship is almost the worst thing that a government can do. RFK Jr., yeah, Space Fraggle, thanks. I'm a free thinker now. I'm not party affiliated. Oh, thank you. I don't know if I'm a good Matt or not. I'm talking like I'm party affiliated, but really I do know that the Republicans can do some pretty cornball things too. They sure can. They sure can. What else? What else? Probably need to be cutting it short fairly soon. Okay, let's share this one. Pointless things that Curtis shares on air.
A point and a half, a first for Democrats since 2004. Global inflation is something that was hard to shut down, but there were other issues that Democrats flubbed, which inflamed the opposition and depressed their base. I'm going to talk about them here because it's the right time to do a postmortem. But to avoid appearing to have 20/20 hindsight, I should say that I have noted each of these mistakes at the time, often provoking angry responses from the left. The first big error was the Biden administration's blindness to the collapse of the immigration system and the chaos at the border. An asylum system that was meant for a small number of persecuted individuals was being used by millions to gain legal entry. Instead of shutting it down, liberals branded anyone protesting as heartless and racist. They missed a massive shift in American public opinion in just a few years. In 2020, the percentage of Americans who wanted to decrease immigration was just 28%. By this year, it was 55%.
Yeah, you're going to ignore 55% of the population and then wonder why you lost an election.
When Kamala Harris went on The View and was asked how she would have differed from Biden, instead of basically saying nothing different, she should have said, "I would have shut down the border early and hard." The second error was an overzealous misuse of law to punish Trump. The most egregious of the cases pursued was Alvin Bragg's one in New York, one that even he was once skeptical of, but was reportedly pressured by some on the left into pursuing. Some cases, like the Georgia one, were legitimate, but the host of them piled on in rapid succession gave the impression that the legal system was being weaponized to get Trump. It confirmed to his base what it had always believed, that overeducated urban liberals were hypocrites, happy to bend rules and norms when it suited their purposes. It's worth noting that in this week's election, a CNN exit poll found that among those who believe that democracy in the U.S. is threatened, a majority supported Trump.
And I frankly do believe that I did not at the time, 2 years ago, I thought that all of this was legit and justified. But a part of what he's saying is true. Maybe if they had put half as many cases against him, I might never have done more investigation, and I might have assumed that the 2 or 3 cases were legit. Instead, really, I don't think any of them were. And I know I try not to. And I'm almost done, folks, and we need to be getting done soon so we can all go over to Netter's Network, where I'm going to be yapping more over there. Huzzah! I have that link up at the top of the chat. What? I want to share one last thing, but what should it be? I think I'm going to share this. One of my friends tried to persuade me that really what I needed to do is listen to NPR. NPR was the source. It was the one that was objective. It's the one that I could get all the information that I needed. Obviously, CNN and MSNBC were right out, but NPR was a source that I could trust. I want you to hear a little quote from Catherine Mayer, current NPR.
I think our reverence for the truth might need to turn. I think our reverence for the truth might have become a bit of a distraction that is preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done. I think our reverence for the truth might.
So I think our reverence for the truth might have become a bit of a distraction that's preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done. And I think Elon Musk's question here is salient. Should your tax dollars really be paying for an organization run by people who think that the truth is a distraction? All right, I'm going to call it a stream. I hope that you learned a little something. I hope it was somewhat entertaining. I know I'm not really Rush Limbaugh or anything like that, but then I don't really want to be him necessarily. Anyway, Space Fraggle, sorry I missed your show. I'll be in the audience. Thank you very much. Appreciate ya. Well, let's get the soft prone music going. I'll thank everybody in the chat. Give you my spiel, call it a stream. All right, and as I said, please join me, Netters. And also, I'm going to take a look at the poll. Looks like the watch party for They Live is what y'all want on Tuesday, so that's what we're going to do. Instead of me yapping about politics, we'll do a watch party of They Live. 41%, 23% of you wanted a chill stream with maybe a panel, and then it was tied for last, more about Trump, and a book review. 17 people voted. Thank you. Thank you very much, Miss Fraggle. And so many good people were here. Thank you, John Claude Herrera. Thank you for your brotherly love, your prayers, your information. LBG Free the Net, thank you very much for the app that you're about to share that will free the net. Rose Random Thoughts was part of an underground raid along with LBG. Thank you very much, and congratulations on being monetized. JG's Metal and Star Trek, thank you very much. You were also part of that raid. I hope you had a little bit of entertainment and maybe got some information out of this. Dega Outlaw, thank you very much. I'm grateful you came along. Thanks for the kind comment. Darth Plato, thank you for coming along and for your kind and insightful comments. Mark Molotov, Kapla. We're going to do a study of sunfish pan-fried with gin and tequila. Jimmy Kid, thank you very much for showing up. Thank you for your kindness. And hopefully you're not one of the ones. If you are, I don't mean to poo-poo you. Hopefully you're not one of the ones that's afraid that things are going to turn into this Handmaid's Tale dystopia. If I turn out to be wrong, I'm not going to poo-poo it. I've learned the hard way that sometimes I can be badly wrong, but I don't think you need to worry about that. I think what we needed to worry about was the loss of our freedoms. And We need to keep holding Trump accountable too. And just let him slide and give him a pass. Tony Cleary, thank you very much. Hell, and thank you for being in listening mode. I'm glad that you were here. Check her channel out, people. Her and her other channel, Fluff Chick Productions. Beautiful videos of birds and Indian music. Very peaceful. Very peaceful. Space Fraggle for Law. Learn not to discuss politics. Somebody called him a terrorist. That's not even cool. I don't know. So much of the divisiveness. I wish I could say it's all on the other side, but sadly, all too much of it's on quote unquote my side. All right. I think I got everybody. I think. Hopefully, if I missed you, please forgive me. It's been said that life is pain, and anyone trying to tell you otherwise is trying to sell you something. I'm in fact trying to sell you something. Trying to sell you on the idea that freedom is better than slavery, liberty is better than tyranny. That you are in fact smart enough and wise enough to run your own life, no matter what big governments or big corporations say. Lastly of all, I would like you to know you're not going mad, you're going sane in a world gone mad. Love everyone here, bless you, and hope you have a wonderful evening. Hope I see some, if not all of you. Well, thank you very much, Connie. At Netters Network, where I try to be reasonable and coherent. Food!